Peg, are you ready and can you hear everybody?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, Jason, are you good? All right, so it is 7 o'clock. I'll call this meeting to order. We have established a quorum that we have myself, Alan, Kurt, and Jamie. Oh, and I see that Dick just popped in as well.
Super, thank you.
Yes. So we have a quorum. We are good. We will skip the pledge since we don't have a flag handy. Are there any agenda additions?
There are none.
All right. Moving on, I would entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes from our March 4th meeting.
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, so a motion by Jamie and a second by Kurt. Is there any discussion? All of those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Alan, are you an aye?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. I was trying to listen for everybody. Okay, new applications received. We don't have any. We have no public hearings, no continued public hearings. So on to new business. Application 05-2020. TR Associates request for inland wetland permit to conduct regulated activities, section 4.3 and 5 at 3 Thompson Road, nearest intersection 3 Thompson Road and South Main Street, Route 5, East Windsor. M1 zone, map 082, block 18, lots 015 and 016. The deadline for the decision is 6/8/2020. For those of you who are not part of the board, but you would like to talk about this, if you can just state your name for the record so we know who's talking. But if one of you guys wants to take it away, you guys are welcome to.
All right, well, this is Paul Tanner speaking. I have a team of Mr. Jeff Shamus from VHB and Mr. Paul Vitaliano, civil engineer from VHB. And I believe most of us have met before when I presented a conceptual plan and spoke a bit about this during our last meeting. You're in receipt of the application. I guess our goal here today, if we can, would be to obtain approval to proceed. As you know, I had submitted along with the application materials a one-page synopsis, what we call the sediment remedial plan summary. And what I think I'd like to do, if it's possible, if Mr. Jeff Shamus could show some graphics up on the share board here that might help us.
Is it okay if I share my screen?
Yeah, greatly appreciated.
Yep. Let's see. It says the host disabled participant screen sharing.
Oh, Jason, is that something that we can change or no?
It probably is. Give me a second to play with that.
Okay.
Try it now.
Okay.
Bang.
All right.
All righty.
Can
I see it.
Yep.
All right.
So this is
All right,
the
Paul.
cover sheet. Again, we have the 3 presenters today. I'd like to give the briefest overall synopsis, and then Jeff can get into the details on the wetlands and the restoration work, and then Mr. Paul V can go through some of the details of the engineering that's important to this whole process. So again, I wanted to get us oriented. Again, I'm representing TR Associates. They are holding company or the land company of KTI, which is an electron beam welding facility here in town. Their facility is shown on the right-hand side of the diagram. To get oriented, again, Route 5 is on the left. Dunkin' Donuts in the lower right. The drive-through for Dunkin' Donuts would be your convenient way to see what's happening once we get machines out there. That's in the just to the left of the larger yellow area. Yep, thanks Jeff for scrolling. That's cool. So in a nutshell, we have between Dunkin' Donuts and the facility, we have a low-lying area, what I've termed a stormwater management area. It's wooded, thickly wooded, and the green pipes shown on the diagram are drainage pipes. 3 of them are on the facility. One is draining Dunkin' Donuts, and they all manifold together to run underneath Thompson Road and head toward the south. The drainage goes subsurface from that point and heads south, and then ultimately goes to a tributary to the Connecticut River, approximately maybe a mile away or so. And Jeff and his team have mapped the wetlands. That's the yellow, or excuse me, the red trace along the edge of the diagram. So truly, we're looking to do some activities in the wetland, and simply we are proposing to excavate up to 2 feet within the 2 yellow areas. The short story on this is that prior to 2003, the facility had a non-contact cooling water system. It was not a closed loop, so they continually purchased city water or town water to cool their machines. And in 2003, they put in a closed loop chiller system, which discontinued that practice. And so during the period roughly 1969 to 2003, we had many thousands of gallons per year of city water running through their machines, copper tubing, and ultimately discharging into this stormwater management area. So it's clear to me, looking at my data, I have over 50 test borings. Just a few of them are shown in white speckles within the yellow areas. And it's very clear to me as a geologist that there's an issue with copper in the sediment. It very clearly shows it's a veneer issue in the upper 2 feet close to the outfall of the pipes, and then elsewhere it's between a foot or a half a foot. So it's a classic pattern of, out the edge of the pipe is where the material got deposited into the sediment. And so Jeff, if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide.
I'm just going to interrupt for 1 second. Dick, can you just, Dick and Kathy, can you guys just mute yourself?
What?
Can you mute yourself? We're just getting some background noise.
It could be the scanner.
Hold on, please.
Just mute it on the computer.
I don't know how. I'm lucky to get on this stupid thing.
At the bottom left corner, there's a little
I
microphone.
didn't even know
thing
you could hear me.
What kind of background noise,
So I
please?
got the background. Why don't we shut the
But
scanner?
I can hear you guys talking every now and then. If you
No,
guys
I
could
didn't know we were on.
Yeah, the bottom left corner of the Zoom meeting, there's a little icon that's a little microphone. If you just click that, it'll mute yourself. And then just remember, next time you start talking to us, just unmute yourself.
Okay, we don't have that up here.
I don't see it. We'll just shut up.
Okay.
You're diplomatic.
Sorry, go ahead.
You have to lower
Got it well
your cursor
pointed.
to a lower part of the screen.
All right, so continuing on here, this is sheet C3 in the plan set from VHP, and this simply shows those same 2 areas where we're proposing to excavate, and the patterning on the ground within those 2 areas corresponds to depth. Okay, so the upper small area is 6-inch excavation proposed. And larger area is ranges from 2 feet, which is the crosshatch pattern in 3 points of the triangle, if you will. A 1 foot excavation, which is the diagonal shaded area, and elsewhere it's 6 inches. So again, like I said, it's a classic pattern that geologists look for of deeper at the outfall of the pipe, and it shallows as you move downstream. And there's a couple of anomalies that you typically have, but nonetheless, so our plan is to excavate to a DEP approved cleanup value, which is $1 million for copper, and use that as our guideline. I mean, our endpoints are clearly defined based on our data. So we're just going to be taking some post-excavation samples when we think we're complete, but that's more of a DEP issue. And we have a construction sequence that's very simple, and that's again, I'm going to just read my synopsis or give you the highlights. I mean, we're basically achieving today, I hope, to obtain our permit from your jurisdiction and later from the Army Corps. And then we're going to be doing some prep work by installing erosion and sedimentation controls, rerouting stormwater at 2 locations, and then removing the trees and underbrush to allow us to do our work. And then the work is going to be done by a meticulous contractor who really has a sweet spot with this kind of work, working in riparian areas next to surface water. And we're going to do surgical removals. We're going to live load the material, which means we're going to be pre-approved at the landfill to receive this stuff, so we can go directly from the excavator into the awaiting truck and not have to double handle the material by stockpiling it on site, which is good. And then we would take our post-excavation samples, which is more for DEP for them to feel confident that we've achieved our objectives. And then what Jeff will speak about next is the making the improvements post excavation, which would be in general replacing the sediment up to its prior level or elevation, constructing some improvements at the outfalls of the pipes, and also I believe at the intake of the exit pipe that runs toward Thompson Road, and then doing a very robust replanting schedule. And also do 3 years of invasive species maintenance on that. And then finally, removing the erosion and sedimentation controls. So at that point, I'm going to end my opening comments and ask Jeff to continue, please.
Okay. So I'm Jeff Shamus with VHB. I'm certified professional wetland scientist, soil scientist, and certified ecologist. And as Paul mentioned, I did the delineation out here. And if I'm looking away from the camera, it's because I have another screen where I actually have the what I'm sharing. So I'm looking at the plans. And so, you know, the delineation was done and is outlined in this black boundary. We still, on this plan, this is a tree inventory plan. We've identified the remediation areas as well, the same locations. And so to understand what we wanted to do for mitigation, knowing that this was going to be all done in the wetlands and there was going to be tree removal and so on, I wanted to understand what trees were coming down, and I thought maybe the commission wanted to know this as well. So we did a tree inventory to understand the abundance and diversity of species, which primarily are willows, cottonwood, and red maples. There's about 35 in this location. There's also kind of an emergent small wetland area that I identified when I was out there. So, and in looking at the shrub species, I kind of took all this into consideration. Up here, there is no trees in the wetlands that are coming down. It's pretty much an eroded channel and some scrub species, shrub species. So in the planting plan, what we did was reforest the area, primarily with a similar makeup of trees that were there. And I apologize if the document's a little pixelated, but there's red maples, there's yellow birch, silver maple, and some black willows that will be in here for the trees. The shrub layer will be about 20, 40, about 80 shrubs that will infill here with a diversity of spice bush, silky dogwood, blueberry, and some airwood viburnum, which is a much better mix than what's out there right now. There's really not much of a decent shrub layer at all. And these will provide local avian species some food and cover throughout the season. And then I wanted to recreate the emergent area with a better diversity of emergent species. And those are going to be different types of sedges, some rush, and Joe Pye weed. And there's going to be about 200 or so of these plugs placed in here. So, overall, and then up in this, oops, I always do that. In this location, we have about 8 shrubs being planted. And as Paul mentioned before, we have at this outlet of the drainage pipe, and then the outlet down here of this drainage pipe, we really needed to put a plunge pool of some sort because of the ongoing erosion that was being caused from the water discharging here. So there's small plunge pools, splash pads, if you will, to eliminate the ongoing erosion issues, as well as we put in a nice one here at the end because this pipe was pretty filled up, and we wanted to stabilize this during the process of the remediation to act again as part of our erosion control treatment method. So along with the plantings and the restoration, I put together an invasive species control plan, and it's about a 5 or 6 page document that I submitted to Ruben yesterday. And in this slide, instead of going through every single piece of it, really want to just highlight the points of the things that we really consider when going into these plans. Understanding what the potential risks are, so we know multiflora rose and bittersweet are the biggest invasive species populations that are out there. And so we know that those are the target species we want to control. The constraints really, I would say there really is no constraints to access a site to do the maintenance for what's needed. We know that the multiflora is also in this, and I'll just go back here. There's some multiflora rose in this area, kind of just before you get into the wetland, between this mowed landscaped area and before you get into kind of this wetland transitional edge. So we know that there's going to be a population here that we'll need to watch out for in the wetlands. We're proposing to monitor, as Paul mentioned, for 3 years, have a licensed landscape contractor to perform the management measures. And those measures that we've provided involve preventative measures as well as the actual control. So we don't want to spread the existing invasive species anywhere. So if there's any fill or mulch material that's going to be used, it needs to be weed-free. And any invasives, whether today or post-construction, we don't want those invasive species to be chipped and spread on site. So, and then control measures are mechanical and chemical primarily. I think, you know, what will work well, especially for the first 3 years, is being able to go in and either remove the small vines that might be growing, or right down to the root, or cut and treat in the fall, because in the fall is really when you have that all of the nutrients going down into the roots from the plant itself, getting ready for dormancy over winter. And that's when you want to apply the chemical control, because that will get right down into the roots. So that's kind of the quick and dirty of the different steps that we would look at and go through and want to manage in this, you know, in these wetland restoration areas. So with that, I will pass it over to Paul and Paul Vitaliano, and you know, I'm sure we, you know, we'll answer questions at the end. And Paul, it's on to you.
Thanks, Jeff. Once again, my name is Paul Vitaliano. I'm a civil engineer with VHB, and I want to talk a little bit about, excuse me, the erosion control measures and construction sequencing that we came up with. And obviously that was done to, you know, part of our primary goals were to minimize disturbance and to, you know, provide erosion control to make sure that we protect the resource that's there. So before I get into that, I just want to talk a little bit about the feature itself. Just want to point out one thing. The wetland system itself, the northern portion of it kind of functions as a detention basin. We looked through record maps and we kind of saw that that was the intent. And right about where Jeff is pointing to now, there's a berm that spans across that area. It's not functioning completely the way it should, because some areas have eroded, but there's a berm and an outlet control structure right there. So when we saw that, we kind of started thinking about, well, this, you know, this area, how much water did it take, or what was its intent? We wanted to respect that and make sure that we understood that we needed to kind of mitigate that in some fashion. So the reason I bring that up is because it played into our construction sequence. And the first thing we did, obviously, is establish perimeter controls and identify the areas for contractor laydown areas and truck access points. And that's where you'll see the two, there's that one and one further north. Those are crushed stone areas for the trucks, so they're anti-tracking pads. We've kind of defined those areas with silt fencing, and you can see the silt fence pretty much go around the wetland. The other important component that I want to talk about, and the reason that I mentioned the detention pond functionality, was that there's currently 3 ways that water enters this area, and one of them is basically the swale all the way from the north that kind of flows into the northern wetland. Then there's also that pipe from the building coming in there, and then there's a pipe all the way at the bottom. So what we did is we wanted to make sure that we worked in an area that was dry for as long as possible. So obviously our sequencing is intended to be during the dry season, but we also wanted to kind of segment this area and make sure that we didn't have water coming into the site while we were doing this remediation. So the first thing we did is you'll notice a row of silt fence on the western limit of the wetland. And what that's meant to do, that's actually a double row of silt fence. And that's meant for any water that overtops the detention portion of the wetland would flow along that silt fence and make its way to the outlet pipe, which is right there. So we would kind of segment that outlet pipe to keep that pipe open, but not to allow the work area to drain into it as well. The other thing that we did is we took the pipe that is draining from the front of the building, and that water right now drains through that pipe and enters right there. We're actually going to block off that pipe at the catch basin that's in that landscaped area. And what we're going to do is we're going to install a pump there, or at least note for the contractor to have a pump at the ready in case he knows it's going to rain. There's sufficient area for that. You could see the contour there. You could inundate that area for a pretty decent amount, about a foot, foot and a half. So we feel that that is plenty for the type of storm that you would have during this dry season. And in the event that does rain, the pump would be installed and a hose would be installed right there where Jeff's shown, going to the catch basin. So the water would continue where it typically would. It just would not go through the work area. So by doing that, we feel that we've isolated the work area, given ourselves a drier area to allow us to work faster and more efficiently. Some of the other sequence issues that we did, or things that we considered, were to then, after we established these controls, to do remediation and then to install riprap at the outlet. And then at that point, we would move into the grading exercises, which is basically restoring everything to the existing grade, installing the plantings, and then when everything is established, we would then remove the controls, the erosion controls. And that's pretty much was our thought process to minimize that disturbance. And that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
All right, well, I'm going to continue on then. I just had a couple of points. Jeff, if you could keep that same plan up, if you wouldn't mind. In the early phase after the installation of those controls, those diversion controls, if you will, the lower area shown just to the left of the hand icon there, that's going to be where the timber is going to be harvested from. All right, so one of the initial steps will be to cut the trees, and that one access point is for loading logs and removing them. And then, like I mentioned earlier, the other rectangular rumble pad up there, riprap, would be for trucks to be able to back in and be live loaded. And then we do have the polygon just to the right is actually for clean fill, because again, we're not envisioning stockpiling impacted material that would go right in the truck. So we just feel like we need a staging area for clean backfill and whatever else right there. So I just wanted to point that out. And the as far as timing goes, the northern excavation area, we didn't feel like that's really more than a day of actual excavation activity and restoration activity, and we would time that for a time when we know there's no rain forecast, say for 2 days. So there really isn't any robust planning for stormwater management there, because it's not going to be necessary. I mean, I think the material coming out of there was maybe I forget 30 yards. I forget the exact amount. But the more southerly area might be in production for a week or two time. So just to give you a sense of what we're thinking on construction duration. So I guess to summarize, we're taking a meticulous approach here. We're going to be ultimately improving conditions once we're done from a environmental ecosystem standpoint for both the food chain when it comes to potential toxicity from copper. That, of course, that's the impetus of this whole thing. And then on the backfill and restoration and replantings, we're going to have a much more diverse ecosystem. So it's going to be good both ways. And again, as far as timing goes, I would imagine this would be a dry season 2020 event. The contractor is available. We just have to see what's up with the health concerns, but this is a permissible activity even now during our COVID-19 period. This is environmental remediation construction, which is appropriate. So long story short, we're looking to do this in July or August. That would be our desired timetable. So with all this said, we'd like to entertain your questions and ask if the commission would be in a position to vote in our favor so we can go ahead and get this done. So that concludes our presentation. We'll take questions.
Yeah, so I'll open it up to the board. If anybody has any questions or comments or anything that they want to say.
This is Jamie, and I just want to say thank you so much for incorporating and considering my comments earlier about invasive species monitoring and management for the next couple of years. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Definitely something
thing,
we should.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just said thank you. Appreciate that.
One thing that I was thinking about was, would it be possible to get the drainage, the soil analysis and everything that you do with DEEP, just so we have those on record when the project is done, to say that it's clean, it's remediated, etc., that what the project is complete on your side. And then for your 3-year management plan, again, if we could have those for the record, just to know that it's been maintained correctly and we have those reports, that would be also very nice.
Yeah, I'll speak to the first question. Yes, absolutely. Coming into this, I have, I don't know, 1,000 pages of actual chemical data from the close to 200 samples that I have. So I chose to keep the presentation to this body simple and to the point. But certainly we will copy your commission on the remedial completion report, which will have the pre-remediation data and the description of how we did what we did, and then we'll have the post-excavation cleanliness sample results, for lack of a better term. So yes, we will do so.
Great.
And Jeff, did you have a comment on the second question? As far as like what sort of deliverable do you offer? Is it like an annual summary report or something?
Yeah, we would issue kind of an annual monitoring report, which would identify when we were out there, what we found, and a recommendation of what should be done.
Thank you.
Yeah. Awesome.
And then I guess to complete that loop, perhaps then it would be on me or Jeff to write a follow-up memo or something to say, yes, the licensed technical landscaper was in there and did and invoked Jeff's recommendations, something like that. I'm kind of speaking out of turn. It's not in my point of expertise, as you can tell, but we'd like to complete the record in some way.
Yeah, something along those lines I think is absolutely sufficient for us. So it doesn't need to be decided now what those specifically are. Certainly as the project is worked on, and whatever you guys have that you either send to DEEP or the state, that we're not doing anything twice. If you're already sending it to them, just pass it over to us for our records too, I guess.
Agreed.
Thank you.
It's Alan Baker. Sorry, it's Alan Baker, a member of the commission. I just was wondering who's going to be doing the post-construction, the 3-year, maintenance stuff and everything. I think it's important that we get that contact info so Ruben can inspect and follow up over the next few years, make sure that's actually getting done. Because it seems like this was probably a good example of originally it was, a nice, neat plan and looked great after it was finished construction, and now it looks like this. And I'd like to try to avoid it looking like this for as long as possible,
Well, you know, so the question is, who is going to be identified for the follow-up
Yeah.
reports?
Well, no, who's gonna actually be doing that maintenance? Is it gonna be the landowner? Is it gonna be your company or some company contracted as part of this process? But who's actually gonna be doing that follow-up plan, the 3-year follow-up plan?
Well, the plan, there is a plan on file as of yesterday, written by Jeff and VHB. They are under contract through me, you know, and I represent the owner, of course. So we do have the 3-year plan executed and like contractually executed. So
So I'll be doing basically the monitoring, and then I think it's twofold. You know, we'll be doing the monitoring, and then a licensed landscape contractor would have to physically do the work. I think that's what you're asking about.
Yes.
Yeah, so you guys would be our point of contact to be making sure that whatever the landscaper is doing it is actually doing that work.
Yeah, and we could work, you know, I was thinking about this as we were talking. We could have an initial report and identify what needs to get done. But when we submit the report to the town, it could be basically at the completion of when the contractor does it. So each year it would have to get done. You know, I would propose in the fall, and then we would be issuing a report that says, we're out here, you know, on this date, this is what we found. You know, this is the recommended methods or means to do the eradication. And on such and such a date, this landscape contractor performed the operation. I mean, something like that. I think that ties it up.
This is Jamie Storiak, and I agree with your letter dated March 31st to Ruben, and you outline your invasive and noxious species control plan, including how that might come to fruition. And I think it's great that you have outlined all of these details, including the time frame and how the contractors might do that for us.
Yeah, it's important, but I think, you know, to basically close the loop so that you know it actually got done each year, we should probably memorialize that in a report that we would submit, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Jeff, this is Kurt Kepschel. I'm sort of new to this, so maybe you can give me a science perspective on this. When you dug down, or you proposed to dig down 2 feet, is that when you did the soil sample, was that the greatest depth where you found the copper, or is that a conservative depth so that you get everything?
yeah, I'll answer that. So we have that 2 foot is where in certain areas the copper ceased to be at high levels, and then we have data to show it's clean thereafter or deeper than 2 feet. And, you know, it was interesting, the data clustered. So we have multiple test borings fairly close together that showed the same general pattern. So we ended up lumping them into dig areas at certain depths. So hopefully I'm answering your question. We have data beyond the 2 feet that shows it's clean.
No, thank you very much, and this has been an informative presentation. Thank you very much.
It was very obvious, even to the untrained eye, where the stuff is and where it isn't, and it is not elevated in copper at depths below 2 feet. And where we're proposing to dig to 6 inches, the data from those areas does not have elevated copper below 6 inches. So it, it varies as geology always does. But we are looking to exhume material that exceeds 50 parts per million. We're intending to have data at the tail end of this to demonstrate adequacy of that plan, and with hard data to show that it's clean once we're finished.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions from the commission, from the board?
No.
The only thing on our remediation plan for the invasive species would be, as Jamie had stated at the last meeting, would be to make sure you do it early enough in the year before the invasive goes to seed, so we don't end up just replanting the invasive back into
Agreed.
the soil for next year.
Okay, any further discussion?
Yeah, I was just curious if the applicant is okay. This is Alan Baker, member of the commission. If the applicant is okay with on the draft permit that we'd be approving tonight, there's an additional condition listed that would be to follow the recommendation of the town engineer from his memo dated March 2, 2020. That a representative of the Public Works Department be invited to the pre-construction meeting because they want to make sure the road is protected. Is that something that you guys are okay with?
Yes. But I'll say I haven't seen the memo, but I remember the three of us spoke with the gentleman, and he was very reasonable. He wants to make sure, to paraphrase what I heard, which I don't know how it's reflected in the written memo, is basically he wants to see the streets not have sediment on them while we're doing our work, right? It's basically anti-tracking. Was that the flavor of the memo?
Yeah, he's big on that.
Yeah, so we gathered. So yes, certainly that individual will be invited once that meeting is scheduled.
Right. I have no other questions.
Thanks for bringing that up, Alan. That was on my next thing to bring up, but that's taken care of now. So with that said, if there's no other further discussion from the board, I would entertain a motion to approve application 05-2020 with the standard conditions and our one additional one.
I will go on record as making that motion, please.
That is Dick. Is there a second?
Second, Jamie.
Second.
Any further discussion?
No.
Rebecca,
Peg, yes.
are you going to add anything about the 3-year monitoring to your permit or to your approval?
Does that need to be in our approval? Alan, have we done that in the past before where we request the final documentation, or is that just?
Well, I mean, we've had that, like I think Newberry Village, where they had to, it was part of the conditions that they had to supply us with a report. So, I mean, I guess it's best to put it in writing.
Okay.
We could add that as another condition that we get the post-construction. I think it was Jeff that was telling us, what's the name of that report?
It's going to be an invasive species monitoring plan or invasive species monitoring report.
So, so Dick, do you want to amend your motion to include an additional condition for for them to supply the invasive and noxious species control plan post-construction?
Absolutely. I think it's a good idea. It keeps it all in black and white. I amend my motion.
Jamie, do you still want a second?
Yes.
Okay. Any further discussion? All of those in favor?
Aye.
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 Dick Pippin, aye.
All right.
Al Baker, aye.
Motion is approved, and you guys are all set.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Presentation.
Thank you, guys.
Take care, everybody.
All right, so to continue our meeting with old business, we're gonna hold off on the violations and ordinance, violation and citation ordinance, the fee schedule. We're gonna hold off on those. Did we want to discuss the application process, or are we kind of good to just leave it where if something comes up and time-wise everything works out, that we hold a special meeting the third Wednesday or whenever is possible to move applications along instead of having it every month? Is everybody okay with that?
May I ask you a question?
Yes.
I have a report that was done by, I think his name was Stephen Byrne from the Connecticut Federation of Planning and Zoning. It was given to the office, I'm going to say 5, 6, 7 years ago. It outlines what the commission's purpose is, what stats you're operating under, what the process is for your meetings, the different approvals and whatnot. Could I scan that and send it to you members so you could review it and decide when you want to talk about it?
Yes, that would be great.
Okay.
So then we can hold off on that until we get that for either our next meeting or next time we meet in person.
Okay.
Thank you, Peg.
Yep.
Any miscellaneous? Any agent decisions?
This is Ruben. No agent decisions, but I just wanted to let you know that that guy at 133 Phelps, I sent him a cease and desist letter this afternoon. He should be getting it, I think, by Friday. It's about a swimming pool. Like last fall, he called and we let him know that he needed some wetland permits and zoning permits. He said, yeah, okay, I'll wait until spring. And then Dick, this is a guy you were calling me about the other day. So, we took some action and hopefully he'll get the letter, I think by tomorrow or Friday, and he'll stop whatever he's doing. And then he needs to, seek the corresponding permits. So I just wanted to let you know that that went down today.
Okay. Can I be CC'd on that email or can that just be forwarded to me?
Yes, I can forward you the letter, yes.
Thank you. Okay, status report from West River Farms for Scannick for the erosion control. Do we have anything on that?
Let's see. There's nothing new going on, but one of these documents, I don't know which one is, but there's some language about this. But let me see if I can pull it up. Hold on. No, I don't have it here. No.
Okay.
No.
Okay, so that is, we can leave that on there for now to follow up next week. Are there any other violations?
Nope.
I wanted to bring one thing up, and we might need Jason's input on this as I'm not sure what the status is, but the development over on 140 by the Sophia's Plaza, I noticed that there's no erosion control for their front detention basins whatsoever. So that needs to be addressed. I don't remember when that plan was approved. I have a feeling it was before me because I don't really remember it. But I know that there was a stop work order on the sign last time I drove by, so I'm not sure if they're still doing construction right now or what their status is, but that's an issue.
You're talking about Calamar?
Yes.
Okay, so we had a conversation with them a couple of months ago, and they had some erosion control measures that were semi torn down, and they put some new ones in. As far as a stop work order, I am personally not familiar with it. Like I saw a couple of guys working at the site this morning. So
Yeah, it was like 2 weeks ago that there was like a pink sign on the fence, and it was like a ceased work order because they weren't getting payments or something. I don't know the full details, but I did notice that they were back working last week when I drove by. So that just needs to get addressed and fixed as soon as possible because their drainage is not being taken care of.
okay.
Hey, Rebecca, can you hear me?
Yes.
The stop work order was issued by the district fire marshal because they didn't have access for the fire trucks. And
Oh, okay.
that was all been remediated, and they are in fact back open and in business again.
Okay. Well, since they're back up and running, definitely Ruben, follow up with them to get that erosion fixed because it's bad.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
If you have any problems, Ruben, get hold of me. I got the super's number, and I can see him anytime I need him.
All right, Dave. Thanks.
Yep.
Jason.
Yeah, thanks. Just to shed a little bit more light on this, they've had some trouble over time with the contractors not getting timely payment from the developer. So much so that my understanding is that their electrical permit is being pulled by the contractor. So they are going to be seeing some additional slowdown on that project, which certainly doesn't speak at all to the lack of erosion control that you raised, Rebecca, but it just is another indication that that's a relative problem development between the fire marshal access and the ongoing problems with vendors and their lack of compliance with the commission's directions. They have not really been good stewards. The selectmen extended their tax abatement through July 1st. I don't know, Alan, 5 days after we got sworn in.
Yeah.
Based on everybody's perspective that I hear from, there's no way they're going to be ready for business and meet the terms of the abatement by July 1st. So I do expect, although they haven't popped their head up at all, but I do expect that they'll be coming back again saying, hey, poor us, it's not working out the way we wanted it to. What can we do? So that's going to be something that the selectmen need to consider in terms of weighing that friendliness to business versus stealing our lunch argument.
Yep. Okay.
By way of background.
Thank you. Are there there's no conferences, trainings, or seminars unless it's all online. Is there anything to share with us, Peg or Ruben?
Nope, I got nothing else.
All right. Any correspondence? Any general board discussion?
Great job, you guys. Everybody getting together. This keeps us going. I'm glad to see you there, Dick.
Well,
Kurt.
Yeah, with two left hands.
We
didn't do a dry run. I might not have screwed it up so bad.
No. Well, hey, no, this is good. Now we're all in. We're motoring on.
Sure.
All right.
But since we don't have Rick, we're just gonna put all the other stuff we were trying to do on hold. Because I think it's important to have everybody else's opinion on it.
Yeah, and if Mike has any input as well. So, all right, any public participation, Peg or Jason?
No, ma'am.
He's here too.
Yeah.
Interesting.
All right, I would entertain a motion to adjourn then.
I'll make that motion.
All right, Dick makes a motion. Who's a second?
Second.
Second from Kurt. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. 7:54, Peg.
Thank you.